everyone. This is Duncan from Riverbark Studio. We're just starting on a new project for a new client, and I thought this time it would be fun to film every step of the process. We started by showing the client some different slabs, different kinds of wood that they might want to use. They chose walnut, and so we went out and sourced a couple of really beautiful, very thick, live edge local walnut slabs. We ran them through a 42-inch thickness sander to get the grain ready to make some decisions about. Laid them out on the garage floor and had the client figure out which parts of the live edge was most appealing to her and which parts of the grain would fit best with their existing decor. So we've got those decisions made now, and the next step is to start cutting. So stick with us and we'll take you through the whole process. One of the first decisions that the client had to make was what kind of wood she wanted to use. We happened to have a couple of really nice live edge slabs of various different varieties lying around the shop. So we invited her to come over to our house and we spread them out on the garage floor. I had picked up this piece of eastern red cedar some time back and have been waiting for inspiration about what to make out of it. We also had a beautiful piece of ambrosia maple where these interesting figures come from an ambrosia fungus that's brought into the tree by the ambrosia beetle. And it's just one of my favorites because of the amazing grain and figure that it produces. We had a piece of live edge walnut tilted up against the wall, and we talked about which of these would go best with her current furniture, most of which is quite dark. And so at the end of the discussion, the client said, let's do it out of walnut. And there were a couple of reasons why the walnut slab that I already had wasn't just right for this project. So I hopped in the truck and went walnut shopping. At my favorite local wood supplier, I picked out a couple of walnut slabs that looked promising, although as you can tell, it's pretty hard to know what you're getting before you run it through the thickness sander. So that's what we're about to do. The first couple of passes just knock off the high spots. Pretty soon you're getting a pretty flat surface with the exception here of the two live edges. And finally, when it runs through for the third time, we wind up with a board that's really ready to use. And at this point, we've done both the top and the bottom. And so this is one of the slabs that I'm going to take home and present to the client. Back in the garage now, I laid the two top edges down next to each other, and when the client came over, we moved them around and tried each of the different possible live edge combinations and finally settled on this orientation as the one that the client thought would go best. So then the question was, are we going to use the crazy grain stuff or the more tame parts in the middle? And when all was said and done, the client said, I just love this uniform center section. I love the way the riverbanks look. I love this more uniform grain, and I want to use these middle parts of the board. And so we laid down a couple of random melamine strips to sort of model what the dimensions of the final piece would be. The client had originally said, let's make it 30 by 48, but it's a big room with big furniture, and so I suggested we make it a little bit oversized. So these marks show 56 by 36. We can always trim it further, but once we cut, there's no going back. So let's get out our trusty digital laser chalk line. We'll use that to define the long cut, in other words, the ultimate width of the boards. And then we'll use a carpenter's square to figure out from that point onward how we want to cut to length. So here's our red laser line. We've set it up so that the boards are approximately equal width. And now we've got a cut line for what will be the outside edge of the table. And we can come back and use a carpenter's square to decide what exactly the cut line should be to cut the boards to length. And I'm marking the fourth one of these now. So we now know for each of the two boards where we're going to cut them on the left side, the section that we're going to use for the table, and where we're going to cut them on the right side. So we're all set. Now it's time to go grab the trusty Festool track saw and start making sawdust.
And that's probably a good place to end the first part of our video series. We've talked about wood selection and layout, and now it's time to start cutting wood. So we'll start that in part 2. See you there.